Flawedcast episode 238, the Pre Adamite World, Part 3. The human race, my intuition tells me, is not outside the cosmic process and is not an accident. It is as much a part of the universe as the trees, the mountains, the aurora, and the stars. Richard E. Byrd.
Flawedcast. Get in the arena.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all of our esteemed Flawedcast listeners. I want to welcome and thank everybody back to a fun-filled, educational, and potentially triggering episode of Flawedcast. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Carl Tuckerson. Carl, it is good to see you back in the world headquarters.
Mr. Williams, sometimes you just have to fall off the face of the earth to accumulate wisdom. And I'm back. I feel wiser than I was the last time I was here. Do I look any
wiser.
different? Good.
You look it.
The gray hair, the gray goatee.
It's like a aura coming off of you.
Yeah, it's my biosphere. That's what it is. But it's good to be back. I feel like I'm at home. So
welcome back, Mr. Carter. All right, well, we have the continuation of our pre-Adamite series, and I'm super excited to get into it with you again, and I'm sure our listeners, because I know they've been asking for it. So we're going to get the shake and howdy out of the way, and then we're going to just get into it, and we're going to ask you guys to follow. I'm going to ask you guys to subscribe, because it's just easier on me, but I'll have to send out 50 texts on Friday morning with the links. But follow, subscribe. You can find us anywhere podcasts are. Just search Flawedcast, CLE, Apple, Spotify, Breaker, Anchor.fm. Once again, anywhere podcasts are. Just search Flawedcast, CLE. You can find us on the video platform Rumble. That is also under Flawed Inc. You can also follow us on the Project Mockingbird social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Getter, Gab, Parler, and we are also now on Threads. That is all under Flawed Inc. In the description of this episode, there's a link to get a copy of my book, Smith's Art of Man Repair Manual, and our email is flawedinccle@gmail.com. Questions, comments, or concerns, send them that way, and we will deal with them accordingly. But it is Carl's second favorite time of the episode, so let's get into it. Let's grip it and rip it.
yes, everyone take your right hand, place it over your left heart, and repeat after us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Carl. So last we left our listeners, we had talked about the city of Atlantis, the technologies and the ethos that came out of that, and we are going to address another, I think, equally provocative and I think historically substantial subject, which is that of Antarctica.
I think we did a great job, not because we're great, but I think because we weeded through a lot of information on the first two about the pre-Adamite world to establish the fact that humanity was God's greatest culmination. We were created in His image. We are His glorious creation, the masterpiece. But before us, there was something.
Yes.
And we did establish that.
I think there's a scriptural and historical precedence.
And anyone that needs to understand that's new, just go back and find the Pre-Adamite 1 and 2.
Yep.
And it will establish with the Hebrew and Greek and tearing things apart that there was something that was here before God brought structure in order to chaos. And because God blessed me with an addictive personality, and I've learned that about myself, my obsessions, I've learned to channel that and focus that onto what pleases Him and be positive and not negative with addiction issues. So, Antarctica. I'm so excited to talk about this continent for so long.
You've been giddy like a 12-year-old schoolgirl.
Well, I have spent hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, because my work week is always 60 hours at least. So in that process of time, in those work weeks, I am able to listen almost nonstop. And that personality I talked about got it latched on like a pit bull that gets a hold of a bumper and won't let go on Antarctica. And there are so many reasons why. One reason why I was fascinated with this topic is because you and I have both talked extensively about Hitler, Adolf, German chancellor, dictator.
Yes.
And we established historically how Adolf Hitler was into mediums. He was into witchcraft, sorcery, channeling, crystals, Satan worship, the devil, anything that he could use to tap into other dimensions, which we've also talked about, right?
Yes, extensively.
Extensively. So under his direction and guidance from all of these outlets that he used for inspiration, and we also established in the past, there's only two kinds of inspiration, good and bad. That's it.
Right.
They either come from God through the Holy Spirit and you're inspired, or they literally come from the devil. There is no other power or source or entity.
There's no third option.
No.
Yeah.
And so we would have to believe in establishing that Hitler was a medium for these spirits and demonic activity and everything else, that I found out he became fascinated with Antarctica. And my question is, why? What propelled him there? What pushed him there? What guided him there?
Maybe he just likes penguins.
Well, he has to like two things. Two things. Ice and penguins. Because according to what they tell you,
That's all
that's
there
all
is.
that's there.
Well, so let me just preface some sources.
Excuse me?
Some sources say that's all there is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I think we're
absolutely.
going to discuss.
Yes, the reality.
Yes, thank you.
Right. But I think we just have to frame this for people, because I don't know how many people have had a pulling to study and read about Antarctica. I don't know how many people care. But I think after this podcast, there will be quite a few that may take the initiative on their own to look into this.
So I want us to start to get into this topic with Antarctica, and you're the default expert. I'm only very topical with this. But one thing I do want to discuss, and I hope this is going to be a good segue. This is an article that just came out on July 3rd, says teenage aviator detained after landing in Antarctica, Chile says. Ethan Go, 19, had been documenting his attempt to fly solo to all 7 continents on social media. He is no longer in custody, but has no easy way to leave off an island off Antarctica's coast. It says a 19-year-old American content creator who is trying to fly solo to all 7 continents was detained by the Chilean authorities this week after they said he had landed his plane on an island off Antarctica without authorization. The teenager Ethan Go said in an interview on Thursday that he was being housed in a Chilean base on King George Island, roughly 75 miles off the coast of Antarctica, as the case against him proceeds. Chilean officials said on Thursday that although Go had initially been detained, he is now free to leave off the island as long as he remained in Chile until the case is resolved. So this is a young guy who was, for charity, going to all 7 continents, flying his own little Cessna plane, trying to bring awareness to a particular adolescent illness and raise funds for it, which is why he was documenting everything on social media. And he gets arrested off the King George Island, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Antarctica, between Antarctica and Chile, and he's detained. And I think we want to answer the question, why is a 19-year-old kid, content creator, trying to do a seemingly good thing, detained from going to a island, which is a continent, which by all intents and purposes, from the Antarctica treaty system that was created in 1948, is supposed to be used for research. It's not supposed to be used for military expansion or the whole military basis. It is for a quote unquote charitable or humane, profitable reasons. And I wonder why this kid was detained.
It all goes back to 1938. In 1938, Hitler knew that if the war was inevitable because he was going to take over the world in his mind, he was led to Antarctica and came under the disguise of creating a whaling base to kill whales because he needed more oil. He knew that once the war started, that he was going to be embargoed and that they were going to shut him out. So he thought that he came up with a great cover that he thought what everyone would accept. The reality is they actually used military subs and a warship to go there and try and establish a base. And what we find with what happened to this child, this 19-year-old pilot, this is a mystery within itself. The international treaty system for Antarctica expanded in 1959. It's over 20 countries now. And what that is, Mr. William, is an agreement with all countries involved that they would not battle to take territory, that there would be no war, fighting, or killing on that continent, that everything that was going to be there, according to them, was going to be done for scientific study.
Correct.
The problem with that is there's two things in Antarctica. There are penguins and there is ice. And the ice is 3 miles deep, 3 miles high. So the idea that you're going to go study, and that is the reason that there are so many countries that are active in these bases, sharing information, combining their military, should send a red flag to anybody. There is no other territory where communist countries, dictatorship countries, capitalist countries, socialist countries, religious countries, there's no other place where they have agreed to come together and allow the sharing of information, the use of military force, and the following of all rules that are instituted by this treaty. So this young man goes to the King George, 70 miles away from where he wasn't supposed to be. Chile is one of the countries that is in this international treaty agreement, and they detain him, but it's all the other countries also that have equal authority. It was just that the Chile military and the Chile authority was the ones, because that was where their setup or their base was. Right. Okay.
They're closest.
Yes. So the question is, what is it about this place that out of all 7 continents, this is the place where the whole world in reality has agreed that there's enough here that we need to keep this secret. We need to shut it down. They give tours. Guess what? It's a little tiny stretch. You have to have a permit from your government. You have to go through the tour agency, and it's just a couple of miles of touring that is viewed. There is no other space that's allowed. And you literally, I looked into this, I read about it. You literally have rules like you can only stand by a penguin for 1 minute, and that's it. And then you must move. It is that strict. It is that shut down. And that
it would be akin to going to the White House and thinking you're going to get into the Oval Office. It ain't going to happen.
That is correct.
You got to stay behind the ropes, as we learned on January 6th.
And then part of that international treaty defense is that, there's no secret here. We even have public tour.
Well, and you can't, to your point, part of the problem with this kid is you can't even fly over. Stopping is one thing, right? So actually boots on the ground is one thing, but actually even just flying over is completely prohibited.
Right.
You can't even just fly over or risk potential death, shooting your aircraft down. Like, there's a litany of things that can happen. But the question you're asking is why? What is so significant about Antarctica versus any other place in the world, versus the North Pole, which is very similar in regards to climate?
Which would be Arctica instead of Antarctica.
Exactly.
And so
why?
this is dedicated to anyone that listens to us that wants to know why we do conspiracy podcast, because I'm getting ready to give you the truth. This would go to one of my now favorite men. His name is Admiral Richard Byrd. At 12 years old, the Admiral traveled the world with an adult chaperone because of his maturity and his desire to discover, because of his desire to explore. He had this innate drawing in him, drawing him to travel, to exceed others, okay? To go out and learn and gather information. And he was so ready for this and so mature that his two parents allowed him to do this without them. This was the man that at 41 became the youngest Navy admiral in our history. That was how excellent and how accelerated he was in his achievements, okay? He is the only human being of this country that has had 3 ticker-tock parades celebrating his heroship. He has gotten several medals and rewards for discovery. And guess what his greatest discovery was and exploration was? Antarctica. Okay? So the government of the United States, the branch of the military we call the Navy, had endorsed him and declared him the golden child, put him in that position of rear admiral, younger than anyone else, gave him all these accolades, and acknowledged him for the exploration and the leadership that he did. Now, there is, and you can read them because I have, an operation that was put in place called Operation High Jump.
Yes.
That's real. And it was
is.
supposed to be, guess what, Mr. William? Science discovery and testing and training in cold weather. Well, here's the problem with that, if that's all that was. When they left to do this little training mission and little discovery mission, Admiral Byrd was leading 4,700 soldiers. That's not a small training.
No.
He had 7 warships under his guide. He had submarines. He had enough military weaponry to battle for a year. And this was set up for 6 months initially. Now, you do not go study ice and study penguins with 4,700 military Navy men. You don't take 7 Armada, the big ships. You don't take submarines to go study ice cubes. So I am insulted that excuse or that reason is in the official records, and because the experts and the generals disguised what was going on as that, I'm supposed to just accept that. I don't know how that makes you feel. I'm too smart for that.
Well, so this Operation High Jump is a legitimate recorded operation in the U.S. Navy and the governmental records. The mentioning of the Nazis, theirs was called the establishment of Base 211.
Yes, it was.
And these were counter psyops that were congruently running, although Hitler did beat Admiral Byrd to a degree. But the important thing here is when you hear of any kind of scientific exploration, it's with a minimal amount of specific experts in any given field, and they're very little funding. You always hear about trying to get grants, trying to get funding to carry on their research. It's very minimalistic. It's very getting by in the skin of your teeth. You're right. You don't have a completely stocked full Navy armada at your beck and call with almost 5,000 fighting troops. And I just want to back up a moment. So in my research, I want to talk about the Piri Reis map. And now this is going to be important, and I'm going to paraphrase what this was. The Pre Reis map is a world map compiled in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Pre Reis. Approximately 1/3 of the map survives, housed in the Topeka Palace in Istanbul. After the empire's 1517 conquest of Egypt, Pre Reis presented the 1513 world map to the Ottoman Sultan Selim I. So why is this important? Why do we need to talk about a map that was created by the Ottoman and somebody part of the Ottoman Empire? The reason this map is specific is because this gentleman, Pre Reis, in the 1500s laid out exactly the proper the geometry, the exact outline of the body of the continent of Antarctica, with one major distinction from then to now, is that the entire continent of Antarctica, according to Pre Reis, was a landmass containing not one piece of ice. And I want that to sink in. That we're talking about verifiably historical facts, saying that within, at the time Admiral Byrd and the Nazis went, you're talking about 400 years. In the process of 400 years, a landmass completely lush with greenery that was seemingly, according to this Pre Reis and his map, sustainable of life. 400 years later, without a Arctic blast, without a drastic change of the climate, is now 3 miles high, 3 miles wide, and 3 miles deep of ice. When has that ever happened in history?
It's not just when, but it's how.
Yes.
And so the mystery of what was going on in 1519, the respect of this mapographer who was representing the Ottoman Empire, who was extremely powerful if you study history.
Absolutely.
And this was a very respected man. He did not misrepresent landmass.
No, this is what he did for a living.
Battles were fought based off of his discoveries,
Absolutely.
based off of his maps. That's how they won. That's how they dominated. The reality is that I believe that Admiral Byrd stumbled upon something and discovered something because of the spirit within him that propelled him as a child to discover. And he brought this news back because of his honesty and because of his really military commitment. He was a lifer. And the discovery happened during Operation High Jump. And this is documented. I would recommend anyone that has any question or anyone that has any doubt, take the time to just go on YouTube and type in
just
your
Antarctica.
little hourglass. Yes.
Just type in Antarctica.
Specifically, also type in Admiral Byrd.
Admiral Byrd.
That's what I did, because there's so much out there.
Yeah.
But during his search and during this period of time where, side note, I do believe that they had feared that Germany, or they got information that Germany was establishing even after the victory, even after the war that was won in World War II, that they were establishing a Fourth Reich, that they did succeed in Antarctica, that they did have military bases, that they were going to reconstruct, that some of the leaders got out and were actually taken there. And so in February,
which lines up very nicely with the Chilean, the Southern American.
That most of those guys went to Brazil and were, lived as like elites in the jungle, just beautiful resorts. I've seen it.
And to this day, there are towns and villages that are strictly full of German descendants. Absolutely. They speak nothing but German to this day.
And they still talk about establishing a Fourth Reich. It's something that was talked about and established. There's eyewitnesses. There's great grandparents, and they got the great grandchildren talking about his dad actually talked to Hitler. Hitler did not die. He actually was in the resort in Brazil. Mm-hmm. Some have said that he actually did travel to Antarctica, that they were successful, mildly. And so February of 1947, The truth of the matter, when you use logic, is Operation High Jump was absolutely a military movement. It absolutely was seek and find and destroy any of the beginning of the Fourth Reich, search for the bases, search for inner tunnel systems, find it. And Admiral Byrd, I believe, was given those orders. And so on his search, he was not searching for what he found.
Not
He
at all.
was following orders, okay? As any Golden Boy admiral who's leading an armada of 5,000 men in warships and submarine and weaponries and planes. So, in February of 1947, he's looking for that. And there is something that I stumbled upon that is called the Lost Diary of Richard E. Byrd. And within that is his personal account as it was happening.
His daily journal that he recorded.
He was very specific.
Yes.
Because I've read it
several
times.
And not only that, but not only was he a devoted military man, but this guy was the explorer.
Yes.
He pioneered and searched every crevice from the age of 12.
Yes.
Like, this is what this guy did. He explored new territories,
That's right.
and he conquered for the American
And he had
governmental
the
system.
adaptability to know how, and the common sense and the logic to know how.
He was
to
well
handle.
equipped,
Absolutely,
and well suited. In addition to the military technology, state of the art at its time,
and the
supplied to
communication
him.
skills
Yes,
for
yes.
native, for strangers, he was the guy. That's why they gave him 3 parades. That's why they worshipped him. That's why he was the guy. The reality is that he gave the report of what he saw and what happened. And it is absolutely crazy. I'm going to talk about it for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to
I wish you would.
He was logging, and after several hours of flying, he entered into what he said should not exist. What existed was a Mediterranean valley with flowing rivers, greenery, beautiful vegetation that should not exist.
Reminiscent of the Piri Reis
That
map.
is correct. Lighting that didn't look like sunlight, but had its own somehow radiating force. Not the sun had disappeared. It messed up his navigation. It messed up his compass. And all of a sudden, then he is approached by what he described in the air as circular disc. And they took control of his aircraft. They lost all control. By the way, I must side note here that Admiral Byrd did establish, because in 1926, he went on his own to discover. He did private funding and he had partnerships. And in 1926, he began the discovery of Antarctica. He went on his own. He had 5 expeditions.
It was a lifelong obsession.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But he's now commissioned by the military. So
Yes.
this is not a private endeavor.
Right.
And he has a mission. And he logs all this. And over the radio system, which they lost all contact to Little America, that was the base he established. And that's where his base was. And he had all communication and the Navy that comes over the radio to relax, Admiral Byrd, you are in good hands. We have control of your plane. You will be landing in 7 minutes. And so they did. They landed him. He got out. He says that 2 Nordic-looking gentlemen or beings approached him, took him into a dwelling, and offered him a drink of which he's never tasted the amazing taste before. And they said, "You've been summoned." And so they led him. And he goes through a corridor. They get into an elevator. He says he's taken down very, very far. The door opens. He is escorted to this huge door that lifts up. And he walks in, and there is a being sitting there. Now, that is what he says in his diary, what they call the Lost Diary.
Right.
Okay? And this person or being says to Richard E. Byrd that we are part of what is known as the Ariani, and we dwell in the inner part of the earth. That is what was told to him. He had been summoned because This is what the diary says, that this is what he wrote. The surface has noticed the destruction of humanity. Now, this was 1947 in February. They were extremely concerned, these entities or inner earth dwellers,
right,
that you have stumbled upon something that was never meant for mankind. Humanity's was never meant. The human being, the human race was never supposed to know about the ability of this destruction and the power of the atomic bomb. And you have just used it. And we're concerned that because of the evil of humanity, that you will destroy, that your kind, your race will destroy each other and kill each other and pretty much annihilate planet Earth, the Earth above the surface. That is what's in the diary. They told him, you are a man that is greatly respected, that we know about you. You are a man of great integrity, and we have brought you here to take back this message to your leadership to tell them that they need to stop this process, to never use it again and quit pursuing this power. It was never meant for humanity. So, there's a few other things, but I'm going to tell the listeners, this of what I'm sharing to you is committed to memory after hundreds of hours of study and reading and listening and rereading and re-listening. There's much more. We don't have the time. He is commissioned to leave. They get him back. They regain control of their craft. He regains radio to Little America. The Navy now had been concerned. He's missing for 3 hours. It's documented. They lost 3 hours of time.
And he had a couple other planes with him. There were three together in that mission.
Yes, and there was a radio man that actually got out with him and walked with him, and he had to actually stay out of the meeting. And oh, by the way, this Ariani, what he called himself, I never heard of that before, but it was the Ariani is what it was called. They referred to him as the master, which because he was the leader of this. That's where the hollow earth theory comes from,
right.
Is that in the center of the earth or below the earth, in the middle of the earth, that there's civilizations and that there's beings. The reality is that Admiral Byrd gets back to camp. He refuses to tell anyone. His radio man knows some things. Right. He is taken back. He is taken to the Pentagon. And all of a sudden, the golden boy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the guy that achieved faster than any other admiral, the guy they gave the parades to, the guy that they worshipped and adored, the golden child. He gives this account and he gives this message to the military, summoned to the Pentagon, and they hold him for over 6 hours doing psychiatric evaluations. They determined that, well, he hasn't lost his mind. He's still the great leader that we thought he was. And then he was excited that they would take heed to the warning that was given. And instead of that, he was ordered to never speak of the mission, to never speak of the event, to never speak of the encounter. And it was deemed classified. And he was ordered as a Navy lifer to not speak about it. And because he was so committed to the military, and he was a man of great ethics and high standards, he did not speak. He did a few interviews. One was with a Chile reporter, and he may have said too much. You can read about that. He did one on TV, and he kind of walked the line a little bit, but he never let it out. But what the military didn't know was that he had kept a private journal, a private diary. And right before he was going to die in there, he put his last entrance that, and I'm going to try and quote it, "I fear that the long wintry night is approaching me. I can no longer keep this silence. A human being may never hear this, but because of my morals and because of my commitment to moral freedom, I must tell this." And he ended it, and he dies. This diary goes missing.
And it wasn't a handful of years I believe it was 1953. He passed away.
Right.
It wasn't too long.
He actually passed away in 1959.
59, excuse me.
And here's the crazy part that people can say, and again, it's not a conspiracy, it's just what happened. His son releases the diary, okay? And mysteriously, his son not long after dies, and the official definition of this, or the official explanation, is malnutrition. He dies from malnutrition, they said, okay? It seems a little weird, but in the end, when this diary comes out and it gains traction, and people start reading this and hearing this, okay? The military and the Pentagon and the CIA and YouTubers even, I found, that probably are getting money from the government, and entertainers, they have attacked the character of one of the greatest Navy men that ever lived. They have said that it's a fraud. They have said that he had lost his mind. They have been derogatory now because of this and what was in it. They've changed their story about him and what he was. And so to me, I'm going to end all of this because there's so much to get into. I hope we just gave enough for somebody to get interested.
Well, and just to interrupt you, years later, the co-pilots were interviewed, and they corroborated what they were able to witness as far as the discs, the entities, the voice coming over the radio, them not manning their airplanes as they were flying through the seemingly jungle middle portion of Antarctica. Once again, all submitted to historical record
and put away and lock and key by people that we're told to trust, by people that we're told are looking out for us, by people that we're told are experts, that they're in positions of great authority. And these are the people who always seem to have the key to unlock the truth. You know what I'm trying to say? And it really irritates me. But again, this is all verified. There's so much more. We just don't have time. I want people to read, to listen, to search, to study, to investigate, to find out on this topic matter. But the bottom line is that one of our greatest explorers, one of our greatest military men, who never really had a bad thing said about him, documented this meeting. So what does it all mean? I don't know. The beauty of where we are, you and I, in sync on, we don't have to always know the answer. We don't have to. But that doesn't mean that we should be afraid to talk about the parts we do know. Right. There is something there. Something is still happening. Obviously, there's no explanation why all of these countries have unified to deal with this continent. There's no explanation. They don't agree on anything else. They'll fight over anything at any time, anywhere else. But this plot of land that is as big as Europe and has only documentedly only been 12% explored. What else is there? Why can we not go there like everybody can go anywhere? Why? They've locked it down, Mr. William.
You know, a couple of the things that I have found, and everything that you're talking about, it's verifiable. You can even go on Amazon and buy Admiral Byrd's diary.
Absolutely.
And it was originally published in 1990 on a fringe, quote unquote at the time, conspiracy theory magazine, but it gained so much traction. There was so much consequential verifiable evidence as far as his integrity, as far as Operation High Jump was a verifiable military operation. The witnesses that were with him, the co-pilots that corroborated everything. And, you know, I just think a couple things that are interesting to think about is, as we're talking about the idea of, back in the first episode, tovu vavovu, in Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 1:2, there was a great upheaval. I believe in angelic war. I believe that when Jesus said he saw Satan fall like lightning, it was during that time period. The reason I like talking about this stuff is because it matters. There are things going on in this world that we can't explain, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be inquisitive. Ultimately, for me, I look at things, and because I bring everything back to movies, there was a movie that came out last year. It's called The Gorge. And the premise of this movie is there's two sides in an embankment. One is controlled by the U.S. military, the other by the Russian military. And there is one person stationed there from each side. And it's literally, they just stay there and make sure nothing comes out of this gorge, which, come to find out, it's a portal to an inner dimension within the earth. Is that science fiction being portrayed in a scientific way? Like we always say that there's these documents or these movies or whatever that comes out that subliminally we like, oh, that's interesting concept, when there might be some validity to that. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that none of this adds up. It makes no sense. A 19-year-old kid can't even go for charity to raise funds and is detained in a Chilean prison for just simply trying to land his plane when he has successfully landed on the other 6 continents. So ultimately, my takeaway is this. When you read the Book of Enoch, when you understand the idea that these fallen angels, these demonic entities, banded together to create offspring of humanity, call them the Anunnaki, the Watchers, the Nephilim, whatever you want to say, it's very possible that those bloodlines have carried down through these centuries. I think it's foolish to think they haven't. And we are dealing with entities, whether this particular, the Ariani, is a descendant of that, whether their intentions are benign, whether their intentions are whatever, we don't know. But what is it? There's certainly enough circumstantial evidence that proves there's something going on. And my thought would be that nothing is created except by the will of God. Nothing seen or unseen. And that's scripture. And what is going on? Is there something in hollowed earth? I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't believe it any more than I believe flat earth. But I believe the testimony of a man who has spent his life as a forerunner of integrity and exploration. I mean, this guy was looked at like in his time like Gus Grissom or Neil Armstrong or, like one of these kind of guys. And certainly to have him be defamed when a little bit of knowledge came out. And it doesn't surprise me that things are not dissimilar now as they were then. So is there something to it? I think there is. What is it? I don't know. I can speculate, but I think there's certainly, you have at least 3 eyewitnesses talk about this thing. I don't believe that UFOs exist. I believe in interdimensional entities. These things very well could be that. Sure. But who knows? But there's something there. And if we're dealing with these things that have these supernatural abilities to take hold of a man's airplane who knows what he's doing and control it and speak through it, whether it was telepathically, whether it was through the radio, whatever, we don't know. Right. But some message was communicated, and I think that it intrigues me to think about what this is, how this fits in with the Christian worldview, meaning if this is a legitimate thing, just like Nephilim or a legitimate thing, like we talk about Atlantis and these other things, that there's circumstantial evidence, historical evidence of the world is weirder than what we know. And there's a lot going on that the Lord, I don't believe he keeps secrets from us. And I believe he wants us to be inquisitive and to ask and to understand, God, what is going on in this world? Because he commands us in Matthew to watch and pray. And I'm just curious. This is a very fascinating subject. You're right. We just scratched the surface. We could do probably another 3 episodes on just this. We could
literally commit a career to dealing with it because of new discovery, and it's evolving. And so I guess my drawing towards this topic is because of my knowledge of the scriptures that tell us that in the last days, things basically will return to exactly how it was in the days of Noah. And most people, when they hear that, like I did for so many years, thought about the fact that it talks about evil would be consuming them day and night, and their hearts were really not capable of thinking even good thoughts. Well, there's more to what those days were than just that. There's more reasons that Noah was chosen to restart, to plenish, to redo humanity, was because the purity genetically, it was not just the purity of the holy life he lived. It was not just that. It was the absence of interbreeding. It was the absence of these beings.
Spiritual genetic
Absolutely,
modification.
right.
Yeah.
And so because he was pure human.
And his descendants were as well.
Yeah. And he was known as righteousness because he came from a pure seed of humanity. So if we're looking for the signs, they're everywhere, that we're running out of time on our eternal time clock.
Yeah.
But there are also many revelations that are taking place that let us know we're way closer to the times of Noah in more than the wickedness of the heart of men. When I hear the stories of beings, when I hear the stories of, well, I don't necessarily believe as far as hollow earth that there's like civilizations, but when I hear about beings coming through portals that CERN has opened, those are not just like humans that are living somewhere else. These are spiritual, interdimensional, demonic entities. And when you're letting them in, I just watched a video 2 nights ago that said, and they're not going back where they came from.
Well,
so where are they now?
Well, it's that movie Stargate in real life with Kurt Russell. And to your point, in Matthew 24, when Jesus talks about as it will be in the days of his return, as it was in the days of Noah, there were entities.
Oh, yeah.
There were Nephilim 30, 40 feet tall walking around, the results of these spiritual genetic modification. So we do understand that there are entities outside of the normal, quote unquote, Homo sapien structure. And the point that I think you're making is whether these Arianans are, I don't know, maybe he had some bad rations and I don't know. I'm not likely to believe that, but whatever it was, there is something there. The fact that it cannot be explored, the fact that you can't go more than a mile in, the fact that like the White House, everything's roped off, the fact that a 19-year-old kid on a journey to raise money can't land his plane as he did in all the other continents of the world. And we're even talking about communist China where they don't let anybody in. You can't fly over and do topographical studies. You can't access it from Google Earth. There are a lot of things that just don't add up. You can look at your backyard from Google Earth, Carl, but you can't look at the whole of Antarctica. Why?
There's a lot of, there's so much information. We could, and we don't have time. Go in depth to study that the satellite imagery pickup, geothermal instrumentations picking up lakes under the ice, eating the farther down you go under the ice. Reports of 72 degrees when they drilled through the ice, that there are reports of tropical vegetation that has been recovered that was frozen, that there is fossils that would live on a tropical island that have been recovered. So there is something there. We don't know what that is. And to be honest with you, we never will. They're not going to let us, and that's fine. They don't let us know much of anything. They tell you what you know. They tell you what you think. They tell you what you can do. And that's where we are now. But again, this topic to me does nothing but excite my soul for the knowledge I have to know that Jesus is coming back, and he is coming back soon. And the more I learn about what is out there, the more I learn about what exists that the devil is hiding, trying to cover up, using nations and militaries to hide stuff from us that if we were allowed to know, maybe we could figure out the truth. But they don't want you to know the truth. They want you to know that the truth is what they tell you it is. And that is the truth. And so they continue to go out there and study penguins. Okay? And they continue to go out there and study icicles. And people are dumb enough, and I'm sorry, I don't know another word. They're gullible enough. Here's one, trustworthy. Because these are leaders would do nothing bad to us, right? They're helping and protecting, whatever. So the bottom line is, welcome to Antarctica topic. What's your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are this world is a supernatural world.
That is correct.
We are just living in these flesh suits that we have moments that we are able to penetrate that realm, that supernatural realm. And even then, we see very dimly at what that is. I think the world is a lot weirder than what we want to admit. I think there are a lot of things that are in this world that we don't want to admit. And whether they're just scary, whether it's our Christian worldview says, you can't talk about our Bigfoot potential offspring of Nephilim. You know, are there such a things as lichens or what's commonly called as dogmen? Are there things that go bump in the night that are purposefully advancing the kingdom of darkness and winning because those who are children of the light won't learn and combat these things? I think those are my thoughts. And I think that these are topics that don't necessarily have any detraction from your salvation. But these are topics much like being filled with Holy Spirit, acknowledging his gifts and callings on your life, walking in close intimacy with him that will enhance and will benefit your life and that will lead you in a closer relationship with him, the creator. So
for me, my final
thoughts.
I like that. My final thought is that I am heightened with more awareness. And what I mean by that is that I look at and listen to everything now that is presented to me as though it's a trap, depending on who tells me or who shows me. And that, I think, is something as we head into the final days that I really wish more Christians would adapt, is that most of what is being thrown to you of news standard, most of that is a trap. Most of that is for several things, to establish fear in your life, because fear is a spirit, to establish anxiety in your life and worry in your life,
which
to
are
rob
also
you
spirits,
to rob you of peace, which to cause you to worry, to cause you to doubt, to literally, I believe it is an instrument and a tool in the hands of Satan that is to uproot your effectiveness and your authority in the kingdom of God. And I refuse to embrace fear. I refuse to embrace anxiety, worry. I question what is told to me. The higher up an authority figure is, the less I believe. The more credentialed they are, the less I believe. The more involved they are in an institution that is supposed to protect me, the less I believe. And you say why? Because I'm learning, because I'm becoming heightened, because I am realizing that what is not what is. That's why, because the reality of history, the reality of the truth and the pursuit of that has taught me, be on guard. Do not put false trust in entities that exist in institutions that are disguising themselves in human flesh. He is leading you to a path of destruction. God is not leading us down that path. So that's
and
my
any
final.
other, and I agree. And just real quick, any entity that is not proclaiming the lordship of Jesus Christ, I think it's safe to assume, by definition, is an antichrist entity. And I think moving forward in these days, we need to just blanketly say, hey, if this person, if this organization isn't edifying us through the gospel, the true gospel, that needs to be a continual red flag, because as we've continually said in this podcast, the Antichrist governmental system is and will continue to work through the governmental systems of this world.
As God has moved in the past.
Exactly.
And we established that
Yes.
already.
Yes.
The moving and the establishing of his will through kings, kingdoms, and governments.
100%.
All right. I guess we can pray.
Let's do it. Have at it.
God, I thank you for blessing us with the opportunity to share this news on this podcast. I pray that people would have a desire to be on guard, that they would be led to your safety and to your protection, and that to embrace the idea that you are truth, and that anything that comes not from you is not true in most cases. It is a trap. It is to lead us into bondage, into fear, into panic, to worry, to anxiety, all of these things, God, to make us non-powerful, to establish your message, to fight this spiritual battle. God, I pray that you would open our eyes every day. I pray that you would protect us and lead us and direct us. And I know you will. And I know that is your will for all of our lives. God, I thank you for your blessings. I thank you for this blessed opportunity. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. This was such a great topic. My only concern is that there's just so much information.
We didn't cover so much, though.
I know, but there's so much more to go into. And like Carl said, if you just search,
Admiral
Google
Byrd,
search, YouTube,
Antarctica,
Admiral Byrd,
all of it.
It's the receipts are there. There's something to look at. I want to encourage people to share. If you want us to continue with this Pre Adamite series, I know there's other things that we can discuss. Once again, topical level, because we're just not going to be able to dive into the depths that these things could go and take us to. But let us know. I want to encourage you guys to subscribe, to follow us on our outlets where you can listen to us. Once again, you can find us anywhere podcasts are. Just search Flawedcast CLE. We're on Apple, Spotify, Breaker, Anchor.fm, anywhere you can find podcasts. Just search Flawedcast CLE. We are on the video platform Rumble, that is under Flawed Inc. We are on the Project Mockingbird social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Getter, Gab, Parler, and now Threads. That is all under Flawed Inc. In the description below, you can find a link to get a copy of my book, Smith's Heart of Man and Repair Manual, and our email, flawedinccle@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns, send us there. Any other topic regarding this Pre-Adamite, where we should go next, let us know. Let us know your thoughts. But remember, the world's a lot stranger than what we know, and we will see you guys next week.